We good? Karen?
Yes.
Good morning. It is Tuesday, September 20th. We're in the Commissioner Boardroom. We have a full slate of commissioners. We have the administrator and the clerk of the board. And at this point in time, I'll call the meeting to order, and please ask you to rise and join me in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is the commissioner meeting minutes from September 6th. Is there any additions, revisions, or?
No.
Okay. And next we go down to office business, vouchers.
Move for approval of fund expenditures in a total amount of $681,356.24 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by two representatives of the auditor's office and the county administrator.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. The one and only voucher.
Yes, one and only.
Okay, next we'll move on to the consent agenda. There are 6 items on the consent agenda.
Move for approval of consent agenda items 1 through 6 as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second on items 1 through 6. I would like discussion on item 2. So I don't see Mr. Erdman in the room. But Keith, maybe you can answer the question for me. I see that we're going to be doing some all-weather on Taylor Flats. And it looks like it's going to be right there at that facility, Douglas Fruit, just a little bit north of it. And I'm just curious, are we going to try to tie in that across Shumway's ground there for the trucks for an easier access onto Dent Road over to 100?
That's not included in this particular proposal, but that is an item for discussion for future development.
Yeah, it would certainly help, because I know that there has been numerous times those trucks are getting sort of jackknife on that corner.
Pinched
It's
on
more
that
than a
corner.
90, and they can't make the corner, and then it backs up traffic both ways. So it's a must. So that was my only discussion. There's been a motion and a second for the 6 items on the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, that takes us down to Commissioner Administrator updates. Mr. Johnson.
Yes, been a little bit of a short week for me, but still pretty busy. Participated in the discussion with the 1152 committee yesterday regarding the addition of folks to the Benton Franklin Health District Board. That process is ongoing. They've established some dates. Commissioner Peck's been involved in that as well. Also listened in on the WASAC virtual assembly call yesterday. There was an update and some information provided from the state's Public Works Division regarding public works projects going around the state and how counties can access some of those resources for our different public works projects. Continuing work on the budget for 2023, some ARPA issues that we're trying to get finalized to bring before the board for approval, and some additional work on the Benton Franklin Mental Health Advisory Council. We just, in our consent agenda today, approved the 17th voting member to that committee. That's a positive step forward. Franklin County still has a vacancy, however, for our representation from the hospitals. We've been reaching out to local hospitals to find and identify a candidate to fill that position. So we're in the process of recruiting for that. Then continuing to work on some personnel matters for the county.
Commissioner Peck.
My report is virtually identical to Mr. Johnson's. Same meetings, same days, same topics. The only thing I'd add is on the 1152 committee meeting yesterday, which is the one that expands local boards of health. There will be a question coming forward as to who the board wants involved in reviewing and approving candidates for that board. Myself and Commissioner Delvin have been on this committee for a time, but that doesn't necessarily require that I be the person to do that. And any additions or applications would require full approval by the board anyway, but just thought out of courtesy I'd mention that opportunity is coming up. Thanks. Oh, and I do have a Wasac Legislative Steering Committee meeting in Ellensburg on Thursday. It's a Board of Directors meeting and Legislative Steering Committee to do the final cut on the legislative agenda in Olympia coming up. Thanks.
Commissioner Mullen?
Last week participated in the emergency management situation training drill. It was pretty informative to see everybody come together and all the agencies work together in case there is a major catastrophe. And it was just a great learning experience to see how it's all put together and handled and everything that takes place in case there is an emergency in Franklin County. And other than that, I had some discussions on the proposed marijuana shop that's being talked about for downtown Pasco, and I guess I just want to voice my own opinion. It's still illegal federally, and my experience with it has not been good. I own rental units, and I have numerous complaints of people not being able to live their life in their fashion because of the smell and the odor coming from the other apartments, and you'll just find yourself with no help coming from anywhere. It's not been a pleasant experience. Tenants wanting to move out. I just don't think it's a good idea for downtown Pasco, but that again is my opinion. So thank you.
Yes, we do have that later on the agenda here underneath Keith's administration office business. My week was a really light week, but I would just like to recognize our IT group for their quick and excellent work on our new microphones and the visual. Thanks for accommodating our constituents so that they may watch and hear our meetings clearly. And then a big shout out to the facilities, because they came in here for a job well done, like nothing even happened. You can't even tell we got new stuff. Great job to both of those. So with that, we'll move down to public comment. Anybody for public comment?
I'm going to jump ahead for you, give you some comment regarding the City of Pasco's request, or the request to the City of Pasco for a marijuana shop downtown. Personal opinion, I'm opposed to it. I see absolutely no benefit in the long run, and I see an awful lot of adversity. On the professional side of it, it has the strong potential of devaluing properties around it. I don't have any statistical data to quote to you, but I believe that it will have a negative impact in the long run if it is approved on other businesses that are in the area of it. Not to mention, personally, I believe it'll increase crime and cause more problems. So since you've got to deal with that after public comment, I thought I would give you some support as far as my opinion and my feelings as a citizen and as an elected. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody on the phone, Keith?
Not at this time.
Anybody else for public comment?
My name is Carl Holder, 402 West Lewis in downtown Pasco. We've proposed, I sent you all a letter yesterday. It was my presentation to the City Council. I own the building there. It's empty. Downtown Pasco is very distressed. There's no business. The streets are empty. The stores and businesses are having a very difficult time because there's no business. Everybody's recognized that one of the problems that we have in downtown Pasco is it's not a destination place. No one comes there, and this marijuana store would be a perfect place to bring people from all over the area, spend their money not only in the store, but learn about some of the great benefits that we have in downtown Pasco. I look at this as a property rights issue. I've owned the building for over 20 years. I've had numerous businesses in there, most of which have either been successful and moved on or have failed. COVID was very difficult for all of us. And so now I believe that with what's in front of the City Council is a possibility that we can improve the area, have a very successful business there that will bring a lot of people. It won't bring crime. It'll bring people generally with money, and people that can enjoy the rest of the socioeconomic benefits that we have in downtown Pasco. I read from your letter that there are other places that you can get it. In fact, the smell issue, obviously people are buying copious amounts of marijuana downtown or pretty much anywhere. There's thousands of pounds of illegal marijuana that's being grown and processed and sold on the street and in the local markets. And now with the existence of fentanyl and other drugs, you have an opportunity to create a very, very serious health hazard by not having a legal dispensary. So in closing, I'd like to say that right here we have a situation where you can go to Pasco, or you can go to Findlay, you can go to West Richland, you can go to Prosser, you can go to Yakima, you can go up to Moses Lake, and you can buy legal marijuana. It's available pretty much all over the state. This would be a great opportunity for the downtown area to be able to bring these customers back to the downtown area so that they can enjoy what we have. And I respectfully disagree with your letter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thomas Granbois, Big Maple Properties, 108 North 4th Avenue. I'm sorry, I just caught wind about this letter just on Friday, so I wasn't able to collect my information, but I'm a member of the Downtown Pasco Development Authority, as well as being a business property owner in the downtown. I also am a landlord. In mid-July, the Downtown Pasco Development Authority decided to support retail cannabis for the exact reasons that Mr. Holder mentioned. It will bring new customers into downtown, bring new blood in, and expose people to other shops that we have, other restaurants that we have that they normally wouldn't go to, dress shops that they normally wouldn't go to. There was a comment about property value. We've had real estate agents talk about the impact of property value, and there is no perceived negative impact from local professional real estate agents that I've spoken with and that have given testimony at city council meetings. I hear your concerns on smoking marijuana in your apartments. Right now, it's not legal. Your renters are already doing that. So to blame something on an item that you can't even purchase legally that will happen more is, I think it's a little bit putting the cart before the horse. And also as a landlord, you can certainly evict those people if they're smoking. I know I can. I don't know what your leases look like, but if my renters are loud, smoke cigarettes, smoke marijuana, do any kind of illegal activity, I can evict them. It's all about, as a landlord, having a quality lease in place or month to month so you can terminate quickly. That's my experience as a landlord. In late July, I had the opportunity to walk around with downtown Pasco with Jose Iniguez and Carl Holder and speak to local businesses. And there was an overwhelming amount of support for retail cannabis. In fact, out of 60 businesses that we approached, 53 of the either owners or managers signed a letter in support, or signed a note in support of retail cannabis. So not only is there support from consumers, but there's also support from businesses. Now, some of the businesses have come back because of pressure and requested that their names be taken off the list because of external pressure. But still, I believe the majority of those people who signed on were in favor of it. So I asked that not only you take into account driving new consumers into downtown Pasco, bringing people from outlying areas in, but also the will of the downtown businesses, because they're the people who are invested, just like myself in the downtown, who have spent out blood, sweat, tears, thousands, millions of their own dollars in the downtown core. So I ask that you do that, and that's Oh, and also I'm part of the Downtown Business Advisory Council meetings on a regular. And I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there's also a majority of support amongst those business owners as well. So I wanted to say that. So thank you very much.
Is there anybody else for public comment?
Kathy Sant Pasco. I don't partake in marijuana myself, but I have family and friends who use it for medical purposes, and I didn't see that being addressed in the letter that you had sent out. I have friends who suffer from different ailments, and pharmaceuticals have not helped them, and so marijuana has been very helpful for them. And we had a friend who passed away from ALS, and this was before marijuana was legal. For even medical in the state, and his doctor recommended he get some because he was losing so much weight, and so they had to find creative ways to find it for him so he would keep his appetite up. So I just want you to look at that. I'm more offended by cigarette smoke than marijuana smoke. I'm allergic to that, and to me they're kind of in the same category. So I just feel like you need to look at the medical aspect of these things also, and not just the recreational use. Thank you.
Anybody on the phone yet, Keith? Anybody else in the audience for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move down to administration office business, Keith.
Yeah, sounds like we're right on the same topic. Commissioner Mullen asked last week for us to consider a letter to the city of Pasco, the mayor and city council, regarding the location of a retail marijuana shop in downtown Pasco. Adjusting to the micro. Can you hear me in the back there? All right, thank you. I've always been nagging people to get closer to the microphone, and now I'm too close. Thank you. Yeah, this is a consideration of a letter. I drafted the language of the letter. It was not really done by committee. So there is certainly room to edit or make material changes. At the time I drafted it, I wasn't sure of the timing, but City of Pasco is having some listening sessions coming up. So it is timely, but it is not critical that we issue this letter today, or issue it at all for that matter. It's an item for the board to consider. It's your decision whether you want to support or oppose the prospect of a retail marijuana dispensary in downtown Pasco. And so I'll just listen to your discussion and answer questions that you may have the best that I can. Thank you.
Commissioners.
I can only speak from my experience, and my rentals are not in Franklin County. They're actually in a county that where it is legal to, state legal. I believe it's still federally illegal. But with those properties in Spokane County, I'm just saying it's just been a nightmare for me, because you have tenants that are trying to study and they're threatening to move out because of the smell. Then you go to the other renters and they say it's not us, it's the neighbors. And then it's just been a constant battle. And that's not even going into the fact of all the other issues that we're facing and with different drugs. And I know they're different, but I still believe that, it's a gateway drug. But that is, again, just my opinion. So I think we're sitting in a time where I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it doesn't matter where you go. Even in my shop here in Pasco, which is clear out by Road 68, you get out of your car and you have somebody that's yelling and screaming and completely out of their mind. I mean, you just didn't see that even 5 years ago. And now it doesn't matter where you go, you run into people that are, for lack of better words, out of their mind because of, some type of drug addiction. And it's just progressively getting worse. And you go downtown Pasco, I've had people run up my car, start banging on the windows because, they're on some type of drug, I guess. It just, I don't know, it's escalating to the point that I don't know what's going to happen. But again, as far as I know, it's still illegal federally. It's only a recommendation, as the city is free to choose to do what they want, and we have no authority over them. But it's my opinion. I'm against it. Thank you.
So a few different issues wrapped up in this one issue. I'll start with the one that I personally think is the most compelling, and it's the one that Commissioner Mullen just spoke to, which is, like it or not, agree with it or not, it's still against the law, federal law. And you've heard me say many times that I don't believe anybody has the right in our society to just pick and choose which laws they want to follow without consequence. And so long as it's illegal in any jurisdiction, in this case federal, that applies to this county, I don't know how a commissioner could support marijuana in their county or any of the cities within their county without violating federal law. And last I checked, our oath says it will uphold the law. So that's a real sticking point. As to medical marijuana, at least today, there's enough availability that I think maybe that concern is logically overcome. And then the last thing I guess I would offer is that there's always a bit of a question in my mind, what is it we're supposed to do sitting up here? Are we primarily to represent the interests and the voice of the constituents that we serve, or are we to sit up here and pass judgment on what we personally think? And that can be a tough one. And so long as it's illegal, I think that overcomes the issue of what our constituents may or may not prefer. Lastly, City of Pasco is doing a couple of hearings on the matter. I would prefer that when we speak our opinion as a board, that we do it after having heard from the constituents that we serve, rather than getting in front of them, which would mean, I think the letter's fine, but maybe we hold off on sending it until after these public hearings and we've actually heard what our constituents have to say about it. Doesn't mean that it changes our view. It may not. But it seems a respectful thing to do for our citizens to hear their voice before we take a formal position. But again, I'm opposed.
I would have
Be
to
clear, I'm not opposed to the letter. I'm opposed to any actions we take that would encourage or support illegal drug sales. I also wanted to mention, if I may just quickly, the state collects about, round numbers, 560, 600 million a year, more than $500 million. And for people who think that brings a lot of money to the local economy, you need to go online and look at where the money actually goes. In fiscal year 2021, and I've got some stats in front of me, of the $559 million that was collected by the state, $191 million went to the general fund for the legislature to do whatever they want. Who knows? I'm not real impressed with the legislature spending these days, but there's $191 million for them to do. There is $272 million that goes to basic health, but no description of what that is. And it goes down the list. The State Healthcare Authority gets $54 million. Department of Health at the state level gets about $9 million. State Patrol gets about $2 million. Liquor and Cannabis Board gets about $10 million, which I'm still confused about that one. It's a board. You got a dozen people making decisions, but somehow there's 10.4 million. And then the other category is 1.8 million. I've heard people speak to these numbers and say, well, this is good. This is producing a lot of money that's going into healthcare. It's going into law enforcement. My argument would be, would we need that much funding if we didn't have the complications that I personally think come with supporting a federally illegal drug product? So that's it.
Well, I concur with my fellow commissioners, and I would like to see Pasco's downtown come back also, but I know that they have a big uphill battle with the homeless. The Tri-City Union Gospel just put up a new facility, and when they close that down at 7, everybody's got to leave, and they're out on the streets, and they are sleeping in front of businesses' doors. This is a deterrent for people to go to those businesses. And when we bring in a facility such as this, we're going to attract more of that. In fact, I think you're probably going to see a lot of the homeless people maybe at the door of that facility. It probably wouldn't do very well in downtown Pasco. I think that there'd be a better location for this elsewhere if they were to do it. As Commissioner Mullen stated, this is really City of Pasco's call. All we're doing is just writing a letter and trying to say, hey, we don't think this is the best option for downtown Pasco. And when I do business down there and I got to maneuver around the homeless, it's saddening because here's people that have given up. Maybe they're down on their luck. We don't know where they're at in life, but we'd certainly love to give them a hand up. A handout does not work. We need to give them a hand up and get them back to being a productive part of society. And I think this will just make it worse down in downtown Pasco. Thank you. So the consensus on the letter, I'm in favor of it. I've already signed it. It's just our opinion. We won't have any say on the city council. And I'm all for signing it, and I'm willing to listen to our constituents too.
I would just offer that listening to our constituents would, I think, necessarily require us to hold off on signing and sending the letter until after those meetings. It's a little empty to say we're listening to folks when we've already signed out a letter, before the public hearing and meetings and discussions even happen. So, just a thought.
I would also ask or suggest that the current wording of the letter does not mention the fact that it is illegal under federal statutes. So I'm getting a consensus view that needs to be added to the letter.
I would agree with that. And I'm fine for listening in to the listening sessions to see what people do have to say. I mean, again, it is my opinion and my personal experiences in having to deal with that law that's, that they can sell it in Spokane County. I just had issues arise that I never even dreamed would come forward. But as far as waiting until after the listening sessions, I'm fine with that. I mean, want to hear from our constituents to find out exactly, what their thoughts are on it. But again, with the fact that it's federally illegal, I can't support it. So
I'm good with that.
Yeah, and I doubt my position would change either. For me, it's a matter of respect for our constituents.
sure, no, I understand.
Hear them
I
out.
agree.
And there's also the issue of, is it our place to be weighing in on City of Pasco process and decisions? I don't see them doing that much, but they do occasionally with county issues. So I don't think it's unlawful or necessarily improper or unethical. I just think we should be cautious about the times we do that. And this is probably, in my mind, an important enough issue that we could weigh in, I think, responsibly. And Keith, I agree, putting the federal statute, I think it's still a Schedule I drug federally, is a significant issue for me, as it is for Commissioner Mullen. If it were legal at the federal level, I think we'd all have to ask ourselves the question, do we harm more people with alcohol and state support of alcohol sales or marijuana? I think they both have their hazards. So I don't want to paint marijuana as this evil thing that is so much worse than everything else. I do agree it's probably a gateway drug, but it's still illegal at the federal government level, so I think that ought to be in the letter. Thanks.
Okay, Keith, I think we got clear direction on that. We'll move down to the request for proposed bid opening.
Yes, we put together an RFP for auctioneering services for potential sale of the Wilson House. We have received 2. I Going to open those and read those into the record for purposes of public participation, and then we will evaluate these proposals to make sure that they're legally compliant and bring forward a contract with a potential provider. First one comes to us from the Booker Auction Company. I have not seen these, of course, so give me a moment to make sure I get to the right page. I'm looking for a number here and I don't see one.
Another set of eyes, I can pass it.
Well, actually, I'm thinking through that a little bit. They have submitted, I think, a qualifying proposal, which would require the county to negotiate with them on the terms of a contract. The request for proposal is just identifying their licensing, their insurance, their ability to provide auction services, after which we would negotiate a price with them. And the other one from Musser Brothers also outlines their qualifications and requirements. Indicates their proposal commission and buyer's premium. It would appear on the surface that both of these responses meet the minimum qualifications for a request for proposal, and we'll now take this back for staff evaluation and bring a proposal to the board for consideration for a contract. These do not list a price for their services.
Did you say that this package gave their fee and buyer's premium?
Yes.
So it does show.
A stated percentage.
Does show a cost.
Yeah.
Okay.
That should remain private until both parties have had
I would think, yeah.
an opportunity.
We've done a number of these over the years. It's the first time I've seen one that doesn't have a specific fee as to
Yeah.
what they're going to charge.
These are proposals, requests for proposals, and they're proposing the process by which they would engage in the services, as opposed to a invitation to bid, which would require a bid number, a bid dollar amount.
Okay. Didn't realize we were using a different process this time.
And those are the only two that we received back. I think there were a couple of others that we invited, but they did not respond. So we will bring these back for the board for consideration for a contract.
So there will be no additional players put into this mix? It's
No.
those two? Okay.
Yeah, it'll be one of those two.
And you can reach out to them, and because this is probably different from other bids where they are selling it for us as to
Right.
buying it from us.
Right.
Okay. All righty. That moves us down to minutes discussion. Keith.
Before we get into minutes, Mr. Chairman, maybe you would say again what you just said. It was new information to me, that this request for proposal was for them to
Sell it for us.
sell it for us. Okay, well, when I made my reference to the previous processes have always been with a stated fee, that was for properties that they were selling for us, not a purchase of a property from us. So just to be clear, this is exactly the same as they've done with other bids. And I'm not objecting to the process. I'm just pointing out it's different than how we've handled transactions in the past where we've hired an auction company to dispose of property for us.
Keith, you'll have to reach out to them and get a percentage of what they were requiring for their services.
Yeah, we'll be able to have comparable.
Thank you. Okay, to the minutes discussion.
Yeah, last week there was a member of the public that commented about their desire to have more detail recorded in the minutes of this meeting. And upon discussion internally with the staff and research and looking at what state law requires with regard to minutes, what other counties are doing with minutes, we've come to the realization that over time we have kind of adopted a bit of a hybrid status of our minutes that we'd like to get away from. And we've been working to try to get away from it. And there are reasons for that. One of which, the basic purpose of minutes is not to record the detail items of what each person speaking has stated. It's not a verbatim representation of the meeting. We record every meeting, and those recordings going back to since recording was invented are available, and we can retrieve those if we need a verbatim transcript of a meeting. But the minutes are simply designed to record what events happened, what took place, votes, resolutions, ordinances adopted, and the specific language of those ordinances and resolutions has to be recorded. But not every pro and con or in-between statement regarding a proposed action of the board would have to be recorded in the minutes. It takes an enormous amount of staff time if we were to want to do verbatim type minutes. So there's pretty good basis or reasoning in not only what we're currently doing, but kind of the direction that we've been heading for a while and trying to get our minutes to reflect what's legally required, what's the professional standard for the recording of minutes that's widely accepted across the state of Washington, but also meets the requirements of for the public to be able to understand what transpired during a meeting, and if we need to go back to some kind of a verbatim hearing, we can go back to those recordings to do that. So the member of the public that spoke, I don't believe identified themselves, and they're entitled to do that. But I didn't want their issue to go unresolved or unresponded to. So that's the kind of purpose of mentioning this morning. And certainly I'm open to feedback from the commissioners, from the public on trying to understand what should or should not be included in our minutes. But it makes it difficult if the clerk, the board who prepares the minutes, has to try to interpret what someone said and not misstate what's being said in a public meeting. So the idea of consolidating our minutes to really just an action item of what transpired in the meeting is more appropriate.
And I agree, because if people are that interested in the meeting, they can go to the audio visual. It's all caught, and they can listen to the whole meeting. So it's there, verbatim.
So Keith, I would add, and I haven't looked at the statute lately, but the last time I looked at it, it was clear that the official minutes, the official record of the meeting has to be a prepared written document, that the video does not meet the legal requirement to be the official record of the meeting. We have tried at WASAC to get the legislature to reconsider that, even so far as to say, can we do an electronic audio and then have that transcribed as electronic transcription becomes more effective. And to my knowledge, that's been denied each time it's been requested. So the other point is that, as I recall the statute, the primary function is to record the actions of the board, and you spoke to resolutions, ordinances, et cetera, and the rest of it is borders on optional. And then lastly, I would note that even though the recorded audio and video of meetings is not the official record and doesn't meet the statutory obligation, it is a county record, it is a public record, and therefore has to be preserved, so it's still there. Thanks.
I think we're continue the way we have done it, to leave it open to interpretation, and to do it verbatim. I think we just continue on with what the action was. I think, yes.
Chair, may I?
Yes, the clerk of the board.
Okay, you should be able to hear me on this. So according to Robert's Rules of Order and the common understanding of parliamentary procedure, the minutes are to contain the place of the meeting, the time the meeting started and ended, which members were present or absent, text of all main motions and their disposition, amendments were made, and the final version of the motion as amended, any points of order that were made and/or resolution, executive session, time of entering, and the time of leaving the session. The purpose of the public comment period is for members to publicly inform the body of their views. This is the important function and is critical for the elected officials to listen carefully to the public and consider what they hear in their deliberations. There is no need to make a permanent record and is not required to be included in the minutes. So I don't know when Franklin County went from verbatim to summary. Currently, we are in a summary form, so you just make a brief synopsis of it. Because of audio and video becoming available to everybody, the majority of those public and school meetings have gone to action only, which record just what action was done and not any discussion. So for me to move forward, I am asking the board to either make it a formal thing, because I can't change this on my own, to either be summary or to action only, and I'm leaving that up to you.
Okay, thank you.
So let me respond to that briefly. Well, I think the recitation from Robert's Rules is accurate. This board has refused to adopt Robert's Rules, so it's not directly on point. Good process, and I recommend adopting it. But I thought it was important to point that out. Robert's Rules is written for an international audience, not for a Washington State audience. Washington State law dictates what we do and don't do, may and may not do. And probably the best reference I've seen on the subject is on the Municipal Research Services Corporation website, which is a Washington State legislature-funded group of attorneys who provide legal views on various matters, including this one. and they point out that it requires the written document, that the video is not sufficient. And the last I recall, they didn't appear to have a problem with minutes that were largely confined to actions of the board, and I don't recall them ever espousing a view where the minutes should be verbatim. So just for what that's worth, it's state law that guides our direction, not Robert's rules, and MRSC is a great place to go for a lot of detail on this. My opinion, of course.
Just to reconfirm, I would say that we just do action only. A summary, I guess, would open it up to interpretation, but I'm fine with action only.
As I am fine with action only also.
I would recommend that Mr. Johnson at least take a look at the opinions expressed on MRSC, and if action only is compliant with a statute and best practice in Washington, I'd be fine with it too.
So, Mr. Johnson, you just got some more work to do.
I already looked into it. And
Yeah.
It is compliant with, okay, so it is compliant. Mr. Johnson, trust but verify, Ronald Reagan, and I think we'll be action only.
Should we bring back a resolution to formally recognize that?
Yeah,
That-
and we'll verify with MRSC,
Yeah.
but I did look that up.
Yeah. We'll certainly
Okay,
be able to do that. Thank you.
sounds good. And with that, we'll move down. You don't have nothing else, Mr.
No,
Johnson?
that
Okay.
concludes my,
We move down to public comment. Anybody for public comment?
So commissioners, being a cop for 40 years, they have this program, it's called Firefly, that actually writes everything out for you if you want them, as long as you capture the video and the audio. And then if that's not good enough, let me know. I can tell you where to send those for transcription. It's about $150 an hour, but it works out if it becomes a legal issue or so. There's ways to transport that audio into a legal document, and being used in law enforcement all the time, mostly Firefly, where you just hit a button and it types the report out for the cop, and then he reads it and it's there. And then there's also the external services.
All right. Anybody else for public comment? Anybody on the phone, Keith?
no.
And seeing that there is nobody else for public comment, then if there's no other business for the good of the county,